Thank you so much for doing this.
Sure.
We're here with Rupert Wates, and if you're watching this in advance, Rupert will be joining us in just a week and a day from now on Friday at the Moon, and we're so excited to have you
Thank
here.
you.
It looks like you're starting out tomorrow, right, on a pretty long tour then.
Well, I've got some gigs tomorrow and Saturday, but I'll be coming home briefly on Saturday, and then I'll be heading out on Monday. And after that, I won't see New York again for a good 2 or 3 months.
Very good. Is
So
this
yeah,
is this the like the first like really lengthy tour since the pandemic, or have you done one like last year? Or?
no, I've been on the road quite a lot. I did about
Yeah.
80 shows last year,
Hmm.
but I wasn't on the road for more than about 3 weeks at any time.
Yeah.
And I will try not to be on the road for longer than that because I've got a small baby at home, so I feel that I shouldn't really,
Oh,
yes, I shouldn't really be on the road for much longer than that if I can help it.
yeah.
At
Is
any
is
one
the road
time.
life something you enjoy? Do you like being out on the road touring?
Well, there are parts of it that I really like, but most of it is just real hard grind,
Yeah.
real hard grind, and the driving certainly is, gets old very quickly.
Sure.
But my favourite bits are, after I've done the gig and perhaps if a couple of friends are there or some people I know in the audience, and we've gone out to get a drink or something to eat after the show, and I can relax, and I've made some money and done a decent job. Those are very nice moments, that I
Sure.
do cherish. But you just have to work very hard to get there.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've had a couple of guitarists already this year. We have a couple more later in the year, yourself included. I was wondering if you could tell our audience some of your favorite music or kind of the influences and sounds that shaped you and like went into you that created the music that we hear now from you.
Well, I appreciate your interest. Well, I would say rec- in recent years, I would say Nick Drake is a very strong influence. Who I think your audience probably will know his name. A lot of the English folk guitarists like Richard Thompson and John Martin as well. These are sort of people from the '70s, which is when I was kind of a young boy, So I, that's what I was listening to at that time. And really, I've never I've never really strayed too far from those guys. But I also used to listen to a lot of other stuff at that time, jazz and classical music. It was fairly eclectic when I was growing up at home. And in terms of my guitar playing, I would say there's another very well known guitar player who's influenced me is Leo Kottke. I don't know if you know his work. He's from the
Sure, sure.
Midwest. Yeah. Uh, yeah, but I like anybody who seems to care about the work that they put out. I enjoy different kinds of music if it's good. I try not to to make distinctions because there's only good
Sure.
and bad music. There's not
Yeah.
folk
Right.
music versus the rest.
Right.
I would hate to be reduced to the category of a folk musician myself. I think I'm not a folk musician really. If you come to listen very closely to what I do.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Did you ever cross paths with John Martin? Ever get to
Well,
meet him or work with him?
funnily enough, actually, he was. We were related.
Wow.
Yeah, only for a brief period because he was actually the stepfather of my cousin. He
Hmm.
took over the upbringing of my cousin when my cousin was a very small child. My cousin is about the same age as me. And John Martin became his stepfather for about 10 or 15 years when he was married to Beverly Martin. And so we were sort of tangentially related, but I never met him. Well, I did go to a couple of his gigs later, but by that time he and Beverly were long estranged, and there was no longer
Right.
any connection between us. So I wouldn't presume to bring it up. Or
So tell me about your recorded output. You have a newer release that you have out, right?
yeah, I've got one called For the People, which has been doing quite well as
Great.
far as these things go. It's also relative,
Yeah.
I mean, it got to number 6 in the folk charts a couple of months ago, but that really only means that about 100 stations played it. It's not. You don't. In the folk charts, you're not talking about hundreds of thousands of sales or plays. So yeah, it's called For the People. Got some good reviews in Europe, and it's a return to my roots in that I based a lot of the songs on old English folk tales, and In the reviews, a lot of people make mention of the influences of John Martin, Nick Drake, Richard Thompson, because they too came out of the British folk movement. So their influence is very apparent on this CD. I'm going back to England next year briefly for the first time in about 20 years to do a tour. That'll be the first time I've been back, and this new CD has been kind of paving my way back in because it's such an English sounding CD.
Tell me a little bit about that for a moment. Are you how are your feelings going into this tour? You know, having not been there in 20 years, how are you feeling about it?
I've got a lot of mixed feelings. Um, I mean, I'm just putting a toe in the water, you know, and to see if I feel welcome, you know, because you know, we have been considering the idea of going back to England to live. Wasn't on the table at all until just quite recently. But so anyway, when going back to England, it's kind of a testing of the water in some ways, in that respect too. Just to see what, take the temperature, you know, and see if we feel welcome there, you know, and if we would like to spend more time there, and if I can make it work there, you know.
How's the music scene there? Do you like? It's still pretty active for this type
It's very
of music?
active. It's just not. It's just nothing like the same scale as America. I mean, you've got the same kind of clubs and, you know, festivals and circuits going on in England, but they're just on a much smaller scale. And I have a lot of friends here in America who are American-born who tour in England and Europe quite extensively. You know, so there's no problem in terms of finding the work, but you know, from my point of view, it's why go back and spend $1,000 just to get there when we have all these opportunities here, right? You know, on our doorstep.
Sure.
You know, America has always been for me what it was always supposed to be, which is the land of opportunity. There are more opportunities here per square mile than any other place in the world. So, you know, I'm very reluctant to walk away from that. But anyway, so they exist in Europe, but you know, on a smaller scale, certainly in England, on a much smaller scale.
Sure. Oh, it's really nice to hear you say that.
Being English, particularly in places like the South
Yeah.
and the Midwest, where it's not so common to meet native English people. In New York, of course, there are a dime a dozen, but and Los Angeles, but you know, in the South, I do have a certain cachet as an Englishman, and of course, I milk that for all it's worth. I'm not afraid or ashamed to use that, make use of it.
Sure. So, George at the Moon, who will be conducting the interview with you on the radio show that we do, the first part of your performance, he always likes to have the guest answer the question of what is your earliest memory that you can recall?
Well, it's quite clear, actually. I can remember watching the Beatles play "Let It Be." That was my first memory when I pretty much first became conscious. I was just in time to see the Beatles break up, you know. And I remember that, and I also remember the moon landing because that was the same year, '69. I was literally just born, and so that's my very first memory, the Beatles and the moon landing. Yeah.
That's incredible. Some of the answers we've received have been, you know, something mundane, something, you know, kind of specific, but yours is really, I mean, what a great, two great events. You can't beat those.
It is extraordinary because I can now look at footage of the Beatles, for example, in the new documentary Get Back, which I admit to having seen. You know, the footage there takes me right back to my earliest memory. Literally, I can remember just, you know, that being broadcast on Top of the Pops or whatever it was. You know,
Sure.
So that kind of ages me, I know, but you know, that's my very first memory, certainly. I don't remember anything else from the '60s. I was only just born, but I can remember that and the moon landing.
Sure. And during the pandemic, was that kind of a super productive and inspirational period for you as a songwriter, or was it kind of just a break from everything, or how did that end up being for you?
Well, I decided right from the start that I couldn't afford to make it just be a break.
Sure.
I had to, like a lot of my friends, we said the same thing. We've got to try and look at this as an opportunity. And in my case, certainly, I did a lot of woodshedding on guitar. I know that I'm a much better guitar player now than I was 2 years ago. and my means to achieve that was to study a lot of classical pieces that I'd never done before. So I sat down and learned a lot of quite involved, difficult, complex classical pieces on guitar,
Mm.
which should be played on nylon strings, but I don't have a nylon guitar. I
I
have
was just
left.
about to ask you if you played it on steel string. Man,
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I do,
Okay.
yes, and in fact, you can see there are quite a lot of videos of me
Mm.
doing some of these pieces, including a lot of flamenco stuff, which I
Mm.
do with a thumb pick, which is
Mm.
um, very much frowned on by purists. But so every month now, I do a classical recital on Facebook, just a lunchtime thing, and I get a bit of money through doing that. And overall, it certainly helped me to become a better guitarist. And I also did a lot of writing. I recorded 2 new CDs during the lockdown, so I tried to look at it as an opportunity. It was an awful disaster. I lost about 80% of my income, but I do think that I've become a better musician
Sure.
through the pandemic. And also, I was given the chance to get to know my son, who is now 2 years old. So he's very
Great.
much a
Yeah.
pandemic baby. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I was able to be at home and get to know him, which I really would not have done if the normal
Yeah.
course of events.
Yeah. Are
So I
you
was
going
actually
to,
grateful.
is he
Carry
going to
on.
be a musician too, you think?
Well, funny you should say that because he does love music, and
Oh,
he's already got
good.
his little
Good.
guitar, and
Okay.
He plays it left-handed. So we think he
All
may
right.
be a lefty, which is going to
Yeah.
be interesting. Because only the best guitarists like Jimi Hendrix and Kurt Cobain and Paul McCartney, they're all left-handed. So I'm hoping he
Yeah.
may follow in their footsteps.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
He certainly loves
Okay.
music.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. What records get him going?
He loves the theme from the Muppets because,
Hmm.
and also Sesame Street because that's
Okay.
like on
Sure.
repeat on TV.
Yeah.
And then he likes some of my songs too, as far as we
Good.
can tell.
Oh,
Maybe just
great.
because they're familiar.
Yeah.
And he really responds when I play the guitar. He always looks very happy and he starts to dance. So
Great. Well, so that makes this. We can say this is now all ages concert with you.
yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. Yeah, he's pretty advanced for his age, I think, in terms of his musical ear. But he certainly loves music.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I think that's all the questions I had. I just wanted to keep it like a nice, short, concise interview with
Thank
just
you.
a short introduction. If you have anything else you want to add,
Well, I would like to add that I think you're doing a very good job at Wild Rose Moon, and right from the start, I've appreciated the trouble that you've taken
oh,
to make it all work. And when I find a venue that is seriously run,
yeah,
at which the presenters and the hosts are appreciative of musicians, I always encourage other musicians to get behind it. And I encourage people that I respect to come and play there because we need you. We need you now more than ever.
yeah.
And I just hope that you're able to go on. You're doing the work that you're doing.
Well, thank
Uh,
you. It's really nice to hear that. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you and hearing you
Thanks
on
so much.
Friday the 17th. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So thank you. Yeah, we have a nice evening for sure. Thanks so
Oh,
much for
yeah.
your interest, Matt. Thank you.
Absolutely. See you later.
Okay then, Matt. Bye
Thank-
for now. Bye
Yeah.
bye.